Okay, this is the CS-2 build video. You're going to want to watch the CS-1 teardown guide, fork lowering guide, and frame cutting guide to get a start, as well as follow the CS-1 assembly guide for the motor mount, side stand, rear set, ignition coil, shifter rod, brake rod, muffler, and decomp linkage. It's optional. And you're going to want to follow the CS-1 body part installation guide as well for the tank mount, battery box, and the test fitting of the tank and the chain guard. Now note that it's much easier to leave the key switch off the tank while you're fitting the tank. Okay, so the first step is, if you're going to run gauges, which are optional, you're going to install either the single or double bracket between the risers and the top tree. So as you can see here, the single gauge bracket is mounted between the risers and the tree with the stock hardware, and the gauge is attached to the bracket with the hardware included. And the next step, you're going to be test fitting the seat frame and routing the electronics. You want to make sure that the seat pan sits level with the tank using the same cuts you did in the CS-1 cut video. Make sure that it runs along horizontally with the tank. You can trim the frame tubes to make it according. You're going to mount the front of the seat with the M6x40 cap screws, M6 fender washers, and M6 lock nuts on the bottom. Here's a shot from the top, through the stock rubber, down through the battery box with the M6 lock nuts on the bottom. You're going to remove the battery box later. Now the front here, you want to test fit the hinge just to make sure it doesn't hit the battery. You can set it in place on the front of the seat assembly. And it's also a good idea to route the electrical components at this time to make sure that everything fit, so you can plan your positioning of your wiring harness and so forth. As you can see here, the seat hinge fits with the battery in place. The rubber is slightly thicker on the CS-2 than the CS-1 to hold the battery out of, or it's thinner to keep it down recessed lower. Now the next step, you're going to take the starter solenoid and you're going to flip that positive wire over to the side, same as you do with the bobber. As you can see here, it's the stock position, and here we've flipped the red wire over. It depends on the battery you use. You just want to make sure your battery terminal, which way the direction is, depending on which side your battery terminal is. Here you can see it mounted to the underside of the battery box with the terminal flipped. It's basically depending on whether your positive battery is on the left or right-hand side. This is just an easy way to flip the wire. Some of the replacement batteries had terminals in the opposite direction. And here you want to double check everything, make sure everything fits correctly, and you may want to note that you don't want to route the wires through the hole in the battery box, but around to the side to keep them away from the hinge. Now the next step is to assemble the seat. You're going to attach the Hartwell latches. You're going to need a rivet gun, as well as the Hartwell latches to attach to the seat frame. Now these are on the bottom. These go mount to the top side because you press the seat hinges from underneath. Now you can go ahead and set the rivets in place. Here's a shot of the seat assembly, and as you can see, this is the bottom and the hinges are mounted on the top. So they go between the pan and the upholstery, the seat frame and the upholstery, and here they are riveted into place. And you can see here, flipped over, how the hinges actually work. And here's another shot of the seat frame. Now you're going to test fit the seat hinge as well on the front. The hinge needs to mount to the front with M6x16 button head cap screws, as shown here in this image. And you can see here they're threaded into the seat assembly. Now we're going to test fit the pan. Here's the pan. You're going to attach it to the hinge and mark the holes. Make sure it's centered and it fits right properly. And then go ahead and mark those holes. And you want to center punch those and drill them with a 1/4-inch drill bit. Here's the shot of the pan marked with the hinge. And the next shot we're showing center punching the holes. And you're going to attach the hinge with M6x16 button head cap screws 2 of them, and the M6 lock nuts. Make sure you use thread lock on all these bolts. The bike vibrates a lot. You're going to want to keep them from coming loose. And as you notice, the bolts come through the bottom and the nuts are on the top. You're going to drill a hole in the upholstery pan to accommodate. Now you're going to attach the upholstery pan to the seat pan. First, you want to make sure that everything fits and the hinge is in place and it doesn't interfere with your battery. So here you can test fit your seat back on the bike and flip the tray up and down and make sure that it doesn't interfere with the battery and that the hinge clears properly. So now we're going to attach the upholstery pan to the seat pan. Here what we're doing is marking through the holes, take those bolts back out of the hinge and mark the upholstery pan. You need to drill holes to allow for those lock nuts to fit through. Here you want to do a pilot hole first. Here's your mark. Use some pilot holes first and then drill the pilot holes with 1/4 inch, and then you're going to step up to a 1/2 inch bit. Make sure you drill really slow, careful not to hurt the foam inside the pan. Drill really slow. Once those nuts fit in the hole, you've successfully done this. Now we're going to mark the upholstery pan for drilling for the rivet nuts. Here we mark 7 holes, as you can see in the photo, that we're going to drill through the seat pan. So what you want to do is go ahead and mark and drill those out with a 5/32 drill bit. Once you've marked all those 7 holes, drill those out with and then mark the upholstery pan underneath. Make sure it's squared up. So you take the metal pan, drill out those 7 holes, and then mark the upholstery pan. Just make sure they lie inside the edge of the upholstery, as shown here. Now you're going to drill those out with the bigger bit, the 5/16 bit, and insert the rubber rivet nuts. Here's a shot of a rivet nut, how it tightens down inside. This is just for reference so you can see how they work. Once those holes line up, you go ahead and take your 8/32 by 5/8 machine screws. It's 8/32 by 5/8 machine screws, 7 of them, and tighten down those rivet nuts. The rivet nuts will expand into place. Now here's some cork we've attached and stuck on with some adhesive to the frame cross member. You want to go ahead and do that. Now here you're going to head take the battery box back off, and now we're going to want to fit the fender. The fender comes long. You can alter the length as you like, but set it in place and cut off a little bit while you're deciding on the length that you want on your bike. Now here we've taped the taillight into place for reference so that we can see the fitment on the bike and how much we want to cut off. And you can see in the next shot the excess that we've cut off. You know, start short and then go longer as you go. You may want to have an assistant hold the fender into place while you mark the next 2 holes. You're going to take a scribe from the inside of the frame through the original fender bolts and scribe 2 holes on the fender, getting as close to centered as possible, but you can center them later. Here's where metal scribe through the original fender mount position and scribing the fender. And then you pull the fender back off and you can make sure those holes are centered. Now they need to be 64 millimeters apart, so check with a caliper, make sure they're centered and they're 64 apart. Now on the other end of the fender, you can draw a center line. We recommend drawing a center line down the fender so that you can line it up with the rear of the bike. And here's a shot of the center line as well. Now with the rear of the fender in position, with the front of the fender in position. Now here's the holes we've drilled. You want to pilot hole those 3/16 and then drill them out with 5/16. So those are 5/16 hole, and this is reattached. You can use the stock hardware to reattach the fender to the bike. And then with the fender in position, you're going to line up the rear. Now that center line you drew on the rear will line up with the weld nut on the rear of the seat assembly. So here's the seat frame and the center line lined up, so you'll know that it's left to right and perfect. Go ahead and mark that and make sure it's in the right spot, and then you're going to go ahead and drill that out as well with a 1/4 inch drill bit. With that hole drilled, you can go ahead and mount it with the M6 by 16 button head cap screw and make sure everything is in position. Now the next step, you're going to mount the little glove box that we've included. You're going to put that down in position and mark the rear rivet holes. Now those rear rivet holes are going to be, as shown here, you want to mark these 2 rear rivet holes. Now you're going to mark those with a pen or or a scribe, and you're going to drill those out with a 3/32 drill bit. Now you're just going to mark the rear, drill them, set the rivets in place, and then you can mark and drill the front holes. So here we've shown the rear rivet holes marked, and then you can go ahead and take it apart and drill the front holes, and don't rivet it until you put the until you paint the fender. And here's a shot with the fender back off and all 4 rivets in place. So you do the fronts first, take it off, mark the rears, and do those separate. Now you're going to drill the tail light out. Mark it in position. This is just an eye thing. Make sure it's centered, and you're going to mark the holes from that with a drill. You're going to drill the holes with that with a 3/16 drill bit. And don't forget to make a hole in the center for the wiring. And here you can see we shaved a little bit of the sides of the fender for aesthetics. Now that's just a personal preference. You can shave those as you like down where they attach to the battery box. The included plastic caps can cap the end of the frame tubes if you want. You may have to trim a little bit off the end of the plastic caps for them to fit down inside. But once you trim them down, you can pop them into place here. Or we're going to have optional accessories as well, turn signals and luggage racks. Now the silicone elbow, you're going to cut a little bit off the silicone elbow. You're going to cut the desired length with an X-Acto knife. You can approximate with a paint pen and then use tape around as a guide. Here we put the tape on. If you're going to mount it to the side, you're going to need our template to cut the side covers. If you're going to mount it in the downward position, you just need to remount the rectifier to the side of the battery box. Here's the template. You can use this as a rough guide, but trim short and then shave long. And as far as the wiring of the tail light, we have stick-on wiring connectors that you can run the wire under the underside of the fender. But here is the tail light wiring diagram, so you can wire the tail light to the bike. Now make note that the ground is in the tail light itself, so if it doesn't ground properly, you want to make sure you have some cleared paint off your fender when you finally paint it, and if your brake light doesn't work, make sure there's a proper ground from one of the bolts. Shave a little bit of the paint off one of the bolts to make sure you have a nice ground. To attach the side covers, you're going to use the same as the CS-1 body part installation video. And yeah, that's it. Make sure you download the PDF manual to get a written diagram too as well to help with your build. Stay tuned for more.